we have these models, urinary system, now much equal male and female because now it's different in anatomy. And then we'll save the cats for 2 weeks from now because we'll go to the reproductive system first. Just look at them at the very end. So that should take us till about 10:45 the latest, and that leaves us with another hour. There are 2 labs we can do, or I could do present my dissertation just to show you what science is actually like in reality. Since we really didn't learn anything about science in this class. We just learned a bunch of facts that were found from doing science. So I'll leave that up to you once we're done with the base lab. And then I don't care what we do. I'll let you guys decide. So I'll start with these ones really quick. I'm not going to put them onto the screen or anything. I'll just bring them a little bit closer, but not too close. So everyone can see. So here are your kidneys. Right one's slightly lower because the liver takes up a bunch of space. All we can see on this model is the hilum. That's an opening. So this fat right here, that little fat area, that's a hilum. That's an opening for your kidney. Okay, and then inside there is going to be the sinus I'll show you on the other models. Okay, we can't really see the arteries or anything, so just kidneys and the hilum. These two kind of beige colored things are the ureters that bring urine from the bladder kidney down to the bladder. And then down here is a bladder. That's all this model has in total. Kidney, hilum, ureter, bladder. That's it. Nothing else. For the urinary system. Okay, this model did not finish taking these apart. Doesn't have much because the bladder and urethra are on the other models we'll go over there. But here we just have the 2 kidneys. This one does have some small details. You can see the cortex, you can see the medullary pyramids, but honestly I have way better models. So we'll just go over those later on. And then ureter. And the blood vessels we already covered in circulatory system. So really, kidney, ureter. Okay. So now, we'll go over these models up on the screen. So this one has your 2 kidneys. So here's the kidney. This is the hilum, the opening where things go in and out. Renal pelvis and ureter. Kidney, hilum, renal pelvis, ureter. On this side, it does show a little bit more details. However, I don't like some of the details. Like, there really is no cortex. They show the medullary pyramids going all the way to cortex, which isn't accurate, but it's a small model. But what this one does show nicely is it does show the calyxes. So these would be minor calyxes. When they fuse together, this would definitely for sure be a major calyxe, and here would be another one. So minor calyxes are the individual ones. And then they fuse together to form major calyxes. And then the major calyxes fuse together to form the renal pelvis. And then the ureter. So not much up here. Kidney, hilum, renal pelvis, ureter, minor calyx, major calyx, and then here is a decent view of the renal sinus. Right there. That's it. And then down to the bladder. This is the back side we're looking at here. Put this back on. Knowingly falling over. But if I move that, it won't as much. Okay. So here we have your 2 ureters. 2 ureters going into the bladder. This is a male. We know this is a male because that's the vas deferens or ductus deferens. Those are seminal vesicles, and that's prostate gland. That's things for next week. But just pointing out the fact that this is a man. So in the bladder, we can look inside, and here we can see the two openings for your ureters, opening for the urethra. The triangle made by those three openings is called the trigon, and it's the least stretchy part of the bladder. The rest of the bladder is super stretchy because it has a bunch of folds called rugae. And the rugae allowed to expand without ripping open or anything. And then you have, I mean, it really doesn't show any details, but detrusor muscles on that side. Okay. Then here, all we're gonna see is this would be where the internal urethral sphincter would be, but it's not really shown. And then this is your prostatic urethra within the prostate. That's it on this model. Now we'll stick to gross anatomy as we're going through here. So we'll go over those models, and then the best model for the lab is here. Okay, let's do female first. So here, let's do this view first. This is the bladder, right there. The bladder is underneath the uterus. And your ureters are right here. Here's one ureter, and there's another ureter. Okay, then here, just while we're out here, to see where your vaginal or your urethral orifice is, it's right here. So there's the urethral orifice, there's the clitoris, there's the vaginal orifice, and the anus. So I have had 3 female students who thought they only had 2 holes. So their sex eds failed them. So they thought that they peed out of their vagina, which doesn't make sense because how could you do that with a tampon and stuff? So just doesn't make sense. So there's your urethral orifice in front of the vagina, behind the clitoris. Okay, so now your bladder. So you can barely see the trigon here, but that's not the model to show it. But you can see some rugae, little folds. And this is the detrusor muscle that makes you urinate. And then here is the urethra. There's an internal urethral sphincter here, and this is the external urethral sphincter and external urethral orifice. That is it. On a man, here is the bladder, no uterus on top, obviously. And then this, and this are the ureters coming down. So now let's open that up and see it. And then external urethral orifice is typically at the tip of the penis, almost always. Sometimes it can be here, sometimes it can be down there at the base, but that's because it didn't develop correctly. Okay, so we'll just use one side. So here is the bladder with your detrusor muscle, rugae, and then here you can see one of the openings for your ureter, opening for your urethra, and this is half the trigon. The other half the trigon is over here. There. Okay, this would be your internal urethral sphincter. This is half your external urethral sphincter. This shows both halves, there and there. One half is missing because they're trying to show you the vulvar urethral gland that we'll get to next week, or 2 weeks from now. Okay, and then so external urethral sphincter. And then the urethra has 3 sections. Prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, just there, from there to there. And then the rest of this is the penile urethra or spongy urethra because it's within the corpus spongiosum. So, detrusor muscle, bladder, whole thing's bladder, rugae, opening for ureter, opening for urethra, trigon, internal urethral sphincter, external urethral sphincter, prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, penile or spongy urethra. That's it. Not a ton. So that was all the gross anatomy. Now we'll go more to histology. So, looking here, here's your kidney. This opening is the hilum. So now your kidney has 2 layers underneath the renal capsule. This layer here is the renal cortex. Spam. Okay. Renal cortex. Renal medulla. From there to there. The medulla has both the medullary pyramids or renal pyramids and the renal columns, which is an extension of the cortical tissue, but it's not in the cortex, it's in the medulla. So that's a renal column, and then renal pyramids. These holes are starting to show the beginning of the papilla, where your urine comes out of, not urine, yeah, urine, it's urine, comes out through there, into the minor calyces. The minor calyces fuse together to form the major calyces. They fuse together to form the renal pelvis. In here, this is your renal sinus, filled with fat and blood vessels. And this is showing a kidney stone, right here. Sorry, I took up your, I just didn't finish cleaning up the lab. So, that's a kidney stone. Things like if you eat a diet with high amounts of minerals like calcium, like you say, like you go to Walmart and you look at the non-name brand vitamins, you'll find like vitamins that say like 3,000% of your daily need calcium. That's not good. You'll pee most of it you'll poop out, and what you take in excess, you'll just end up peeing out. And if you keep on peeing out a bunch of things like calcium, they can form deposits and you can get kidney stones. So, there's that. Okay, this is starting to depict some things we're going to see in better detail here, but these little red balls would be the glomeruli. The blood vessels out here would be the peritubular capillaries. These would be the vasa recta. And this is just showing the nephrons. So, but anyways, here, I have a bigger view here. So we'll go over that. That's dark. The other models were really bright. Okay, say something. Okay, so here, this stuff, you can see clearly here. So this is the renal cortex. No. Renal capsule. Here to here is the renal cortex, and this is the renal medulla. Capsule, cortex, medulla. Then these are nephrons. This is a good example of a juxtamedullary nephron, and this is a cortical nephron. The juxtamedullary nephron, its renal corpuscle is fairly low in the cortex, and its loop of Henle, more importantly, goes all the way down through the medullary pyramid, or renal pyramid. That's a juxtamedullary nephron. A cortical nephron, its renal corpuscle is high up in the cortex, and its loop of Henle barely goes into the medullary pyramid. It does, but it doesn't go all the way down. So juxtamedullary nephron, cortical nephron. I'll just use this one because it's nice and complete and shows everything correctly. So this is the renal corpuscle. Then you have your proximal convoluted tubule. Then we start the loop of Henle or nephron loop here. This is the thick descending portion, thin descending portion, thin ascending portion, thick ascending portion, and that's all portion of the loop of Henle or nephron loop. And then we get to your distal convoluted tubule, which this one's correct because it shows the distal convoluted tubule comes back and interacts with the renal corpuscle. And these are just the glomeruli, the peritubular capillaries, and vasa recta. Then we're going to look at one of these renal corpuscles here. Okay, so this is the large diameter afferent arteriole. It's really open. There. Here, try to stay in the same spot. This is the smaller, more narrow efferent arteriole. And this is this. This is the distal convoluted tubule coming back and interacting with the renal corpuscle. And this is where you have your what's it called? Is it juxtamedullary apparatus? Yeah, I think it is. Anyways, you have your macula densa cells here and juxtamedullary cells here, things like that. Okay, this is the glomerulus. It's a capillary bed. And then you have your Bowman's capsule. Your Bowman's capsule has two layers. The inside layer, or the visceral layer, are podocytes, whose little feet sense podocytes. Think think podiatrist, that means foot doctor. So podocyte means like foot cell. So these little feet cell has cells that interdigitates, like that. And then they form little tiny filtration slits that things can move through. Not much, just water and small dissolved things. Big things like cells and proteins stay behind. Okay, those are podocytes. Then the parietal layer of the Bowman's capsule is a simple squamous endothelium that transitions into the simple cuboidal endothelium of your proximal convoluted tubule. And that is it. That's what's on your test. Okay. And that's not much. I really did not cover much at all. So now, I can go over some of the same things on the male and female analysis table, and then we get to decide what we want to do for the rest of the time. As a group, I'll give you two options. I thought of a third, but I don't think we need it. I thought about continuing lecture, but I don't think we need to do it yet. If we really need to do it, we can do it 2 weeks from now on that. Okay, so over here on the analysis table, what screen do you look at? That one? Any difference? Okay, it's easier for me over here because I'm closer. Okay, so this is reproductive system as well. So that's why the breast tissue is up there. I just want to show you the reproductive system on the woman because look at the bladder. Here's your bladder, but look what happens on even a non-pregnant woman. A non-pregnant woman, the vast majority of her bladders are sitting on top. Vast majority of your uteruses are sitting on top of your bladder. Not everyone. I did just see like last week a woman's uterus who was leaning that way, like against her sacrum, on the internet, not in real life. So, okay. So I'm going to get rid of the reproductive system now, so we can focus on the urinary system. I just wanted to show you the bladder, the uterus sitting on top of the bladder. So let me get rid of the now we just have the urinary system. Okay, so kidneys. So there's a kidney. The opening that's not highlighted, that's the hilum. And then inside the hilum, you can see the renal sinus. Anyways, here's the renal capsule. This is the connective tissue outside. Getting rid of that, there's the actual kidney itself. There. Okay. I don't remember if looking inside is decent enough, so let's try if it's helpful. well, yeah, you can see the stuff. So you can see the difference between the cortex. So here's the cortex. Here's the medullary pyramid, and that's renal column. You can see all three major things. Cortex, renal column, medullary pyramid. And as we go through it, you can see more. So that was a good one there. So like medullary pyramids, renal columns, and cortex. And then sinus and stuff. Okay, now get rid of that. And then now I can also get rid of, I think I can get rid of the cortex. Yeah, here's a renal cortex. Let me just make that transparent. Let's try that. There, now it's transparent. Now I can see through it. So these are the medullary pyramids. You can see just how they are. And they're divided in the space between them by the columns. And then I can make the pyramids transparent, and then we can see the minor calyxes, the pyramids drain into. The minor calyxes fuse together to form the, sorry, this is minor and major calyxes. So, minor, minor, major. Minor, minor, major. Minor, 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 major. And then the renal pelvis, and then the ureter. Okay, now down into the bladder. Here's the bladder. Your two ureters are going into the back side of it. And then, let's try looking inside of it. Let's go front to back. So there, we can see inside. Okay, so here, we have that. So here's opening for one ureter, opening for the other ureter, and the trigon, because there's the opening for the urethra, which is down there. You can see a little bit of rugae. See the little folds there? A little bit of rugae in there. And then here's the detrusor muscle. Okay, and then this is your urethra. So you can see the urethral orifice there. And then it comes out between I'll have to add that back in. So here, the labia majora, get rid of that. Labia minora, get rid of that. And then here we go. So here is your urethra. No, I'm missing stuff. That's why it looks weird. There's urethra. There's a vaginal orifice. And then that thing sticking out there, that's what you think of your clitoris there. But as we'll see in lecture now, your clitoris is like way bigger than you think it is. So that's all you think of it, but it's actually really big. So, and there's more stuff here. So there's a clitoris, urethral orifice, vaginal orifice. Okay, now for the male. Kidneys are going to be the same. There's no difference, obviously, male and female kidneys. So renal capsule, get rid of that. Renal cortex, let's just get rid of that this time. Here's the medullary pyramids. The minor and major calyxes. So you can see, like, minor, 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 major. Minor, minor, major. And they go to the renal pelvis, and then the ureter. So, exact same. Last one. And then here on the bladder, let's go front to back to look inside. There you go. So here inside the bladder, you can see there's one opening for your ureter. I can go a little bit more, and so you can see more. Okay. So we have your opening for your ureter there, other ureter there, and the urethral orifice is down there. Right there, you can see opening. My pray just click prostate. So, and there's a trigon there. I'm gonna zoom out so you can see rugae. You can see the detrusor muscle, and then inside of here, can you see any rugae in there? Yeah, so those little ridges right here, those are all the rugae. Okay, now, here's your, let me go out. Okay, and then, there we go. So, here is, we're looking side view, so this would be like this way view. So here's a prostate. I'm gonna make the prostate transparent. And then here, we can see the prostatic urethra going through the prostate. There's an intraurethral sphincter here inside the bladder that prevents the urine from contaminating your emissions. And then extraurethral sphincter there is an extraurethral sphincter that surrounds the urethra. Okay? And then, make that transparent. So that's the prostatic urethra. This is the membranous urethra. And then we have to go inside the penis to get to the penile urethra. So I have to get rid of a bunch of layers of stuff. A lot of fascia and connective tissue are in the penis. So this is a corpus spongiosum of the penis. It's a tube on the bottom of it. Make that transparent, and then we can see the penile or spongy urethra there, coming out the tip of the penis, Alpha-Galans penis. Okay, and that's it. That's all on here. So now, we have an hour left. So we have two choices, and I'll